Ladies and gentlemen, this is Friday Night Live. My name is Kesh. I've got Sean, I've got Mark, and we are very, very excited to be here. As you can see, we're back in the Bella Vista Hotel, and we've got producer Ryan. Let's just see how long producer Ryan pays attention to us. There we go. That's the challenge. I'm going to put a stopwatch on. But today's topic is Australia's real estate market divided amongst various levels of buyers? What I mean levels is budget, because we've just seen in the last 4 weeks from recording this podcast today is there's been a record sale for a $50 million cliff edge home in Sydney and a $36 million home where a McLaren by a young entrepreneur was being pulled up, a $3 million car. It was all over the news. I'm sure those of you who are watching were aware. Some of you loved it. Some of you hated it. Well, it doesn't matter. Opinions are opinions. But tonight we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be picking Sean's brain, Mark's brain, doing a little bit of commentary around this divided market, the market which has money, the haves and the have-nots, right? You started with Batman. Batman is the haves, the billionaire daddy, right?
True. They don't necessarily want to flaunt it.
They don't, and some people do, and they're trying to prove a point. Maybe it wasn't showing off their personal wealth, but maybe it was a sign of hope, like the bat signal in the sky saying, hey, if I can do it, maybe you can. Everyone has their own perception. Everyone can view it differently. But ladies and gentlemen, tonight's Friday Night Live episode, we're going to be talking about this. There's some mad sales going through at every level. Like I told you in the last podcast, in the Ponds, which is a New South Wales suburban, we saw a $2.3 million sale. This was places where people were buying house and land not too long ago in 2013, 2014 for $700,000-800,000. We've seen another sale, single level home, $1.8 million sold in Box Hill, another New South Wales thing. Again, Melbourne, high-end, $36 million. Penthouse with a $3 million McLaren, a $3 to $6 million interior budget, right? What is going on in this marketplace? Everyone is really, really, apparently, according to 60 Minutes, is doing it tough. What is happening, Sean? So I'm going to ask you first, why are there people with such level of wealth buying real estate? Is it just because they have money, or are they seeing something that the everyday Australian is not seeing?
Fantastic question, Kesh. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I think the crux of the matter really is that if you've ever thought that you were a person who was not wealthy in any stage of your life, whether you were coming up in your career, whether you've already made it in your career, the only reason you would think you're not wealthy is because of a comparison factor to others in the game. Now, what the media doesn't tell us is that if there's a $50 million sale or a $39 million sale that's just hit, let's say, the jackpot on the news media, right? Mm-hmm. What the media won't tell us or divulge to us is, did the original owner anticipate a purchase for $100 million or $500 million? Because we know this when we look at global real estate, there are pieces of real estate that are worth upwards of the hundreds of millions of dollars. So let's scale it back down to families now. So families that are competing with one another. We talk about this all the time in our discoveries with people about the factor of keeping up with the Kardashians or keeping up with the Joneses. Mm-hmm. We realized that over time that, okay, my mate upgraded from his $1 million home to a $3 million home. So if we took that upgrade of $3 million, which is technically a 300% upgrade on owner-occupier, and we took it to the guy who bought a $40 million penthouse, how would the $40 million penthouse purchaser look at a $3 million purchase? They would look at it as being subpar. They have certain expectations, which is sit at 39,
I've not done the
million.
math, but I'm pretty sure that was his stamps. The government's happy.
Actually, yeah, very close. Very, very close to the stamp duty, right? So what people get confused in all facets of life, regardless if you're playing the game at the top level, what is the top level for most average Australians today is being in the top 1% of income. Take your family to 300,000 AUD per annum plus. Let's start at now the lower end of the top 1%. What are you buying? A $3.5, $4 million asset? What are you getting at the top end? You're getting $40 million, $50 million sales.
I think top end only starts 12 million plus. Like that is when you start to get into good stuff. Let's just call
Sure.
it.
So this goes back to one of the episodes we've done more than 12 months ago called Levels to the Game. If you haven't seen that already, check out that episode because
I love it.
there is levels to this game. So a lot of people walking out there going, well, I wouldn't spend $1,000 on a watch. It just doesn't make sense. It tells the time. Well, hang on a moment. Why would that person...
Because you're a...
Well, why would that person make that statement though? I wouldn't spend more than $1,000. There are people that wouldn't spend more than $50 on a watch. So what separates 50 to 1,000? What's the math? Is that 200%? Something close to that?
Yep.
So let's take the $1,000 watch and multiply that by 200%. What's the answer? And so forth, so on. So I think Kesh, it always goes back down to levels to this game when it comes to displays of wealth and so forth, so on. Because rewinding the clock 5 years ago, you were mentioning about someone wheeling up a supercar up to an apartment and it looking good, and in tough economic times, gentlemen, let's be honest, tough economic times, good economic times, keep coming and going.
Correct.
So 12 years ago, when we had the GFC, if someone wheeled up a $600,000 hypercar up to their 5th floor penthouse,
Yep.
that would have had the same painful effect to buyers that are looking at it today with numbers that are inflated.
Oh, 100%.
So I think it always boils down to perspective. I think it boils down to what people need to realize, what level they are playing their own individual games at.
Sean, do you know what? I've always... Look, I don't know much about the New South Wales purchase of the 50 million. I'll be honest. There was something I just came across, but this one in particular, the apartment, and the reason I'm talking about it is because all over the media, everyone's covering it, and funnily enough, we normalize being poor and miserable and living in caravan parks, and we almost demonize an act of this. And I'm not being someone who's justifying what is happening, but for me, to be honest, that was a representation of the power of this economy and a person of under 40 years of age growing up in this country, in this economy, being able to achieve that. And I've always believed the economy is abundant in a sense that there is X amount of dollars every year to be going around, and it goes to different industries. And if you have what it takes, you will get a piece of the action, right? And I feel where a lot of people should really understand is often we are limited, or you know, the horses have those blinders. You know, my favorite. I love acreages and horses and paddocks and all that sort of stuff. So,
Paddocks and paddocks.
Paddocks, yes. That was really good.
What's up? Hit me up with some music, bruh. Let's go. Play them tunes.
I don't know if we've got any music. That's the Melbourne Cup.
You can put that in a blooper reel later.
We can, absolutely. But I feel like we often have blinders on, and our 5 friends and 5 relatives and 6 co-workers essentially dictate what normal life should look like. And we here in what we do as individuals, forget the business side, forget everything, just we as individuals, we've always aspired to do a little bit better every single year, every single minute, as best as we can, right? And I think this economy, and Australia is not used to this, it's very normal. I grew up in India. It's very, very normal to see displays of wealth, people spending, I don't know, $50 million on a wedding. Very normal. Very, very normal. I know it sounds crazy. Very normal. The Ambani wedding, I want to Google it. It was ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
There's a society of haves and have-nots, and for the longest time, I think in this country, we've had a large middle class. And some people have not really started with a lot, but have been smart to make decisions and have gone to the next step. No one's got your hands tight. Like I was seeing the other day, like a bit of the budget, and I digress here a little bit. This just came to me. There were about, again, I'll check my facts, but I can't remember. It was 40,000 people or a little bit more that were on job seekers for over 10 years. And right now, the RBA is busting our for saying that we need to get unemployment rates higher. Like they're really low and everyone's got a job. We need them higher so we can bring interest rates down and inflation, too much money in the economy, clearly with the McLaren. But a lot of people don't have too much of that money. And the real reason now for people to understand is why. So Mark, I pose this question to you. In the same economy where builders are going bust, where things are going wrong, how does a company like Multiplex, who's a builder developer and a lot of mainly a builder in a commercial sense, how are they delivering these experiences? How are they delivering these projects? How are they finding these customers? What's happening on that end of the market? And what are the others missing out on? What is the news doing to these guys where they're scared and the other guys are going in? This was an off-the-plan apartment that he bought, right? Gets the worst rep. Off-the-plan apartment, unconstructed, getting a McLaren in there. What's happening? How's Multiplex doing this?
Well, I think you gotta look at it for what it is at the moment. Multiplex doesn't just build anything and everything anymore, right? They usually get invited. People want them to build for them. So they are willing to pay the price. They obviously don't underquote anything. They charge a premium, especially with all of their commercial products that they build, let's say. They're never going in at anything less than, what I know anyway, 20% margin.
So you're saying if anyone tried to negotiate with a builder and cut their legs down and the builder today went bust, it was on you.
Well, look, you're right. No, but there is a lot of people out there that will always, want to bring it down. But if you work in with your builder, as an example, just using that as an example, they're going to deliver for you.
Because here the developer's working in with, he's the builder. So the developer is buying land, and instead of constructing a house, it's constructing apartments.
Let me take it back to what you said as well. You mentioned a very good point. In Australia, for many, many years, we've had a huge middle class. Huge middle class. And for the last 5 to 6 years, I've been saying the same thing. We will divide. And there will be 1% and there'll be the rest. There will not be any more middle class.
Or the middle class gets so huge and sparse that it blends in with the remainder of the culture that's left, which is what's happening in countries like India.
It is.
The middle class is so huge that it is the 1%, like you just mentioned, and the rest.
And the funny thing is, I've got a friend of mine who lives in Europe, met him in Australia, but he's from Europe. And he goes, when you come to Australia, you can't tell the difference between wealthy and non-wealthy. And I think a lot of people from overseas...
Everyone's got the Havanas, the shorts.
Very true.
Everyone wears... You can drive a nice car and you can be earning very minimal wage, right?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you're driving the same car as what a guy that earns $1 million a year is driving.
True.
But taking it back to the question, I mean, at least from my opinion anyway, is, looking at, let's say, Multiplex as an example. Look at their client, all right, who's developing that product. These people are not just people that are kind of waking up one day and going, oh, I've got a nice little block down the road. I'm going to subdivide it and do something here. And I've got to squeeze him down there and squeeze that in order to make a bit of... No. They're coming in, obviously, let's say most of the time these developers are backed by funds management and so on and so forth. But in this instance...
So you're saying now average mum and dads are competing with fund managers and hedge funds with basically unlimited cash.
Well, it's been happening in the UK for a while. You've got...
Or the
large
rent-to-own
funds,
model and
well,
stuff.
not just rent to own, but large funds are going out, investors, let's say wholesale investors, and buying up blocks of residential real estate, house,
That's the best return.
It is good return, but they're snapping it up. How do you compete with someone like that when you're dealing with multi-million dollars and you've got your emotion on the line?
Be in the game 20 years ago. It's the only way.
It is the only way, right? In comparison, but how do you compete now? It's going to be hard, right? And again, the difference is there is that 1%, which will probably grow as well as a, what I think as a demographic, let's say.
But
right?
dude, the more, it is really, really tough to make $100,000, but once you're making over 2 million to get to 10 million, it's pretty easy to scale because you have the capacity to just deploy capital, essentially.
All right. But let's say for those that are maybe listening today that aren't going to be anywhere near that anytime soon, right? Because it's a fair point, but at the same time, it's very unrealistic for a lot of people, right? We've got to understand where our limitations are now as well. And I say this because at the end of the day, the 1% will continue growing. They'll continue doing these buildings. The price of real estate will continue going up because Multiplex is not going to charge any less than what they did today.
Oh, dude, things are just going to cost more and more.
It's going to cost more and more and more. Everything will go up. Right, and they're going to continue winning jobs. And I've always said this as well, especially in the last 3 years. Everything will turn into a monopoly in Australian real estate, especially with construction. And it's happening now. You are seeing the big boys surviving, and let's use Metricon as an example.
You got to give context. So, guys, if you think Porter Davis and Metricon are big boys, like when we talk Multiplex and these, there's a whole different level.
But yeah, hear me out for a sec. So we got your Metricon who got, whether they took out a line of credit or they got a handout. I don't know the story and I'm not going to comment on that. But regardless, they were saved, right? Then you've got all these other smaller builders. No one's been given any form of safety line, let's say. Then you've got your larger builders. I'm talking in the apartment game, the commercial game, majority of the time in the residential apartment game, not necessarily commercial, because commercial profits are a little bit more heavy. And you're seeing these people drop like flies. Now we're starting to see developers drop. All right, they're starting to fall into liquidation, and it's always going to be the builders first. But I've always said you're going to see a select few. I'm going to use a couple of names as an example: Built, Multiplex, possibly Richard Brooks as an example. But
Nice one.
using some of these guys as an example, they have been now the top standard, right? They are almost to a degree.
It's like an economic sifting.
They're used by government. Government will say, we want you to renovate our museum, for example, right? And we're going to invite the top 3 builders to tender. Eventually, those builders will then snap up the whole market. There will still be room for the small guys, don't get me wrong, but it's a monopoly here, right? And they will dictate the terms, right? If you want quality, it's going to cost you this much. If you want delivery time by this date, it's going to cost you this much. And if you don't like it, go speak to
do you
the
know
other
what,
guy.
dude? I'll be honest. In the labor market that we have today, and if you want quality people, you got to pay for it. And a lot of professionals, and this is where like buyer behavior goes wrong, where I feel a lot of professionals, they demand a higher salary because they value their talent. But when they interact in the economy, they devalue the other person and try and look for so when you chase, so it's not about expensive or cheap, it's the best value. So if you're saying to me that if I'm a developer and I'm building a luxury unit block where I'm going to sell $36 million apartment, if one builder's costing me whatever $10 and the other one says $13.50, reality, that's the difference. There's really not like 10 or 20 happening here. It's 10 or $13.50, right? That $3.50 extra makes the biggest difference. And that is where I feel a lot of times it's just not real estate. Everywhere.
Correct.
Everywhere. So when people go shop at Aldi, I don't think you're cheap. You're looking for value. Right? When you buy stuff that's expired and give it to your kids, there's something wrong with you. Like straight up, I've seen people do that. That's horrible. Like, what do you really value in life? Like the whole reason to earn money and money loses value is to spend it. Now you can choose to spend it. Like even the watch example, just going there, Sean, we love watches and we've had these conversations again and again, right? Someone buying a $600 G-Shock, that watch is worth $50, right? $50. Someone buying a $60,000 Rolex Daytona, the green money dial, full gold, or buying a Paul Newman or a Panda, they spend 60, but that watch is worth 100 grand today. So from a percentage perspective, same thing with cars. Someone who buys a rare $600,000 Ferrari, in 10 years, that car's going to go up 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%. So someone who bought $1 million Enzo, they're selling it for $5, $6, $7, $8 million, right? Versus someone who buys a $50,000, I don't know, you know, it's now they're selling it for $5 grand because they were like, oh, you know, service is only $200 because you're, you know, like I'm straight up. So as much as you think that people are spending money on the wrong things and think about it. Don't be the guy who's chasing $50 and $100 things. Save and buy quality. Look for value. That's the difference. That's the difference. And this is something that we are not seeing in the marketplace for a very, very long time. And I have seen buyer behavior of the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots can be really cheap. The haves can be really cheap, right? So for example, you will not see a person leave extra change at McDonald's. They will go and buy a $5 burger or $8 burger, and they're not going to be like, oh yeah, tip them, right? But when they go to a fine dining restaurant and they have their business colleagues there, they tip really well. So when they walk in next time, they say, good evening, Mr. Sean. Welcome back. Would you like your favorite corner? How does the other person perceive them in that matter? And there's a business deal that is going to happen that is going to be far more valuable, that relationship, than the cost of the dinner or the you know, like the perceived cost of that experience overall. And value is not just always money. Sometimes relationships, sometimes experiences, right? So I think where the haves have done it really, really right, and I'm slowly noticing this more and more and more and more, instead of going and saying, you know what, let me just start from and again, I'll give you I'm going to censor this because I don't want to name suburbs and, like, you know, people get upset and stuff. But, like, let's just say they go buy an apartment and right? And it goes back in value. It goes backwards in value.
Which it has in some instances.
It has. It really does. And another suburb, like, you know, has gone back in value. But for the same amount of money, because they thought they...
Racial demographic.
No. Like, same thing with, like, units in... You know?
Treason. Treason.
But you could have used the same money to buy in Collingwood, Melbourne.
Freestanding.
Why didn't you?
Actually,
beat that one?
and in other cities, freestanding.
Freestanding
Free dwelling, non-strata
Beep it out.
assets.
They don't deserve to hear. Beep
No,
it
but
out.
like, I'm just saying, I'm like, dude, like, when people, like, and I was speaking to producer Ryan earlier, and he's like, you know, a lot of people are upset about the McLaren thing. I'm like, why? Like, I'll put it out there.
I have the most profound thing to say. Can you beep for 5 seconds straight?
Yeah, 100%. But he said to me, and you know, Ryan is someone who's neutral. He goes, I get this, and he gets it, right? And he's like, a lot of people are upset, and they're like, you know, people are doing it tough, and you know, this show, well, a lot of haters in there. I woke up when I saw that. I'm nowhere close to that level, straight up. But when I saw that gave me hope. I was like, wow, this person, same economy, similar age as me, just people will be like, oh, it's all in debt. At least you could borrow. Like, what does your servicing look like at the state? Do you know what I mean? So maybe there is something that we, the everyday people, including myself, I'm sure there would be parts that I could do better.
Let me also add to that. If you're borrowing at that level, you're not borrowing 80% LVR.
No, you are not.
And
if you are, you're doing it for a very specific reason.
That's correct. Even the $3 million McLaren, everyone's like, oh, you can't even drive the car. True, it's track focused. It's a Senna. In 20 years, that car's going to be a collector's car. He doesn't want to put miles on it. You don't get the story behind it. And then they'll be like, this is, Sean, you would love this. You would love this. I was hosting my webinar, the very famous webinar. Can you put a shameless plug link to register for my next one? And I had a few people talking about, like, I had an income bracket there of, I don't know, 300, 400 grand, my average couple who was investing. And the reason I had that, and I'll publicly say this, is if you're in Sydney and you earn less than $150,000 as a household, you do not even put a scratch to whether the real estate market goes up, down, or sideways, because Sydney real estate is so expensive. So someone to play in this real estate needs a household income of 250,000 plus for most good suburbs.
I don't even think to play anymore. I think to survive. You need your quarter of a million.
So I wasn't being classist. I was being practical. Right?
Absolutely.
So some people were like in there, blah, 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 going off, you know. And I remember being a child, and one of my, I can't remember, like teachers, someone in school said to me, it's like, you know, oh, these rich have their own secret tricks. And today, when you jump on a webinar or you create a YouTube video like this, or you give them free information, instead of taking the information, they go, what's in it for you? I'm like, bro, literally, we are the source of stopping gatekeeping, because we were never part of the top 1%, and we're making our way in there. We're learning, we're sharing our experiences. And the first thought goes, hey, let me use some of this for myself. It's free. It is literally free, and yet you think there's some trick attached to it. God bless your soul. First you had a problem, the rich don't share their tricks. Now they do, now it's a problem.
Yeah.
What do you want? You can't win. You can't win. But look, I think instead of waffling on, I reckon you had a really fair point, Mark. I reckon you covered that really, really well for what it is. And for ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this, look, this one had to be a little bit around a mindset piece about talking about, you know, how to perceive things. And hopefully we have not offended anyone. And if I have, I don't like really. And you have all the right to have your opinion. I think personally looking at that McLaren up there in the crane was like, yeah, the boys. This is Friday Night Live. My name is Kesh. Thank you for watching. I really, really wish for each and every person here watching this or consuming this, you find your calling, you work towards the 1%, and all of you buy crazy apartments or houses and, you know, your dreams come true. This is Friday Night Live. This is a wrap up. Sean, Mark, Kesh, wrapping up. Do you want to do Rapid Robbins?
I've got a very special question for you
both.
both.
Let's go.
Are you ready, producer Ryan? In one word or how many ever words it takes for the title to be answered. What was your most played video game of all time? Go. And the answer can't be I don't play video games. The answer is what was the most ever played?
I already know.
Need for Speed.
Need for Speed. Which one though?
Underground 2.
Underground. Oh, he named the best ever one. GTA 5 spec.
Oh, yes.
GTA 5.
Okay, great work. And that's a wrap.
That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Until next time.